Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. This is Jose Palomino, your host. And our guest today is Gilles Bertaux, who is the CEO and founder of Livestorm.co. And they are a cutting-edge video engagement technology. And what's interesting about them is they went from a scratch startup to a growing business in a technology space that's dominated by some big names, including like Microsoft and Google and so on. And yet they're thriving and growing. So I think as owners, there's so much for us to learn on Gilles' journey, and we're going to explore it right now. Well, welcome, Gilles, to the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I'm very excited about having you on the show because of the things you've done, but I always like to have our guests put it in their own words, who you serve and what do you do for them. And we'll start there, and then we're going to expand on this. And for our listeners, we're going to be talking to Gilles about his journey as a fellow entrepreneur business owner as well. So Gilles, just tell us a little bit again, who do you serve and what do you do for them right now?
Really good question. So my name is Gilles, co-founder, CEO of Livestorm. We are a video engagement platform, and we are a platform that enables customers, well, in the B2B space, those can be sales, marketers, but also people working in HR to host events from 10 to 3,000 people of events. Those are obviously online events. And the typical use cases that we see a lot are the good old marketing webinar, the product demos, the all hands meeting of this world. So yeah, this is exactly what we do.
Okay, and now I'm speaking to you. Where in the world are you right now?
I'm based in beautiful Athens, hence the sunshine.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's fantastic. So you truly have built an international business in a relatively short period of time. And of course, that's technology enabled and so on, but it's a real thing. So I'd like to just spend a little bit of time with you, Gilles, today to just explore how you came about, like even starting the business and what you've been learning running a growing concern now. It's very different when it's an idea on a whiteboard and maybe you and a couple of initial founders, and now it's over 100 employees and it's a global presence and all that. So
As I always say, it's a really successful succession of events where we got really, really lucky. It's a really cool planets alignment kind of way. But the usual story that I tell during onboarding sessions so people know where we come from is basically the tool that they're looking at is a final exam project from school. This is how everything started. We started back in Paris. I was fifth year student in college, and this is where I met my co-founders. So I have three other co-founders, CTO, CPO, and one specifically dedicated to the video space. And I met all of them in the same school. We all did some design, marketing, web development. So actually I have a CTO that knows how to design, and that's a really interesting fact. And you know, in this fifth year, you have to actually build a product, build a business plan, and eventually get some users and present that to the jury, right? And for me, the main idea came from being an intern at the same time in a company in Paris and startup actually convention. And I was doing a bunch of webinars for them. And basically I was running into the same issues as prospects still run into to this day. And the thing is, I was creating this unnecessary friction because I was forcing them to download something to attend an event, right? And those guys, they work in insurances and banks and whatnot, and they don't have the right to download something on a computer. So I was losing people just because of, well, technical reason, which was a nonsense for me. And the other main issues that I found is that those type of solutions, they are really IT focused. That means that basically they don't care so much about the jobs to be done around the video. You organize a lot of podcasts and organize sessions, perhaps even some events, so you know the value of creating good landing pages, of the branding, of the emails, of the reminders, all those things. And the tools at the time, they were only caring about one thing only, is the video technology, and which means I had to redo the whole thing. I had to redo the landing pages and emails. I was spending a lot of time doing everything else but the content, which, you know, webinar was a great medium, but in terms of ROI, it was like really, really bad because I had to redo the whole thing. So the main idea was summarized in one simple sentence. Let's build a online event product that lives in a browser and then doesn't care so much about the video, but how do we make life easier for the people organizing such event by leveraging, by doing the heavy lifting for them and caring about all the jobs to be done around video. So that was a really first insight, and then the rest is history. We presented our product to the jury, and actually we streamed for 8 hours straight with everything. All the other teams actually wanted to use our product to stream their own presentation, and after 8 hours of streaming using this really proof of concept product, we're like, man, we built something that people like, and let's do something about it. I mean, we're gonna transition from being used, I mean, at least in France, we have that capacity because of the public infrastructure, but we could actually transition from being a student to being an employed, and for us it wouldn't make much change from a lifestyle perspective. So we didn't have a family, we didn't have all that stuff, so we were free to try, free to experiment. So this is the first lucky move that we had. We were at the right time, at the right place, I suppose.
Well, yeah, and certainly, they say, luck is preparation meets opportunity, right? So you have to be ready for the moment, right? Because a lot of people could have seen the same circumstances. And what's fascinating about that is, the world of video conferencing has been around for a while now. GoToMeeting, WebEx, been around forever. I mean, it seems like forever, a good 15, 20 years. And I've been using those things. I used Join Me was the closest thing to what you had described, something simpler. Use Skype. We use it internally because it's basically our Slack for a small company, basically, so that it's old fashioned, but it works. And it also lets me dial regular phone calls. But my point is, yeah, and by the way, Skype's owned by Microsoft, right? So you have, and then I guess GoToMeeting and WebEx eventually by Cisco. So you have these mega corporations. So I cannot imagine there wasn't somebody in your circle of either friends or family that says, Gilles, that's crazy. How are you going to go up against these guys, right? I mean, I got to believe you heard that more than a few times.
Oh, yeah. I think that's part of my excuse were that we were really candid and young, and we were, I guess, there were a bit of arrogance and say, you know what, we don't care. We're just gonna go for it and see what happens. I think, well, there was obviously that a part of that. I mean, was what I've just described, but we had this gut feeling that, we had this design prototype with the final vision of the product that we wanted to have in our end. So just beyond the proof of concept that we built, and every time we were showing that to marketers, go marketer were actually the main target at the time. They were like, man, I want to have that. I wish I could have that. So we realized that I think the missing piece for those software that were around for the past 20 years was, I think, as simple as design, simple as UX, something. I mean, when you look at the B2C space, you have that so much offer, so product that are so easy to use. You go to in Instagram, you just click on a button and you can actually reach out to hundreds, even thousands of people. But when you come to the B2B space, for some reason, it's not as easy. And I think it all comes down to design. It all comes down to having a marketing/product mindset to be insufflated in that IT paradigm that was video conferencing. With just that gut feeling and a bit of arrogance, I think we just went through the tunnel that people screaming at us like, "Don't do it." And we're here today, so I guess we did something right at some point.
Well, a couple of things. At that conference you mentioned where you introduced your product, and you said that other people presenting were seeing what you were doing and they wanted to be in on it, because then that told you, in a sense, in marketing terms, we call it like the MVP, right? So you actually, the minimum viable product, you had it, and you probably didn't even plan to validate it that way, but it got validated very quickly right up front. But the other thing you mentioned, and I think there's a real lesson here in your story for anyone listening here who competes against very big companies, is, yes, the big companies represent the status quo, and it is what people expect and what people are used to today, no doubt.
Yep.
And chances are, because they're big companies, they stop listening to their customers in the little nuanced details, like what frustrates customers, what ticks them off.
Yeah.
And you went right to that. What are the frustrations? What are the things that aren't working? And you said, well, what if we solve those problems? Well,
Exactly.
Microsoft's not doing this, or whatever. If Cisco's not doing it, maybe. Well, it doesn't matter because they're so up here, and they're already like in a world of they're measuring success in the billions.
Yeah.
There's all these opportunities, and I really believe in most business categories there are narrow lanes of opportunity that if you could just be willing to say they're there, there's something that frustrates people, and that's what you tacked into. The fact that people couldn't load software if they weren't allowed to, like in insurance companies and so on, which is heavily secured, firewalled, and so on. You figured out ways around that. Now,
Yeah.
now as you move into growth, right? So you had some early success immediately. You had a little bit of what you call it arrogance, they call it confidence. You just said, let's try it, right? And you had little to lose. You're coming out of college, so you said, let's go for it, right? It's not like you were like, you weren't at the stage of life where those risks become bigger
Yes.
to take. Growth starts happening, right?
Mm.
And with growth, what happens, that small team of dedicated partners that know each other, like each other, trust each other, like band of brothers, right? Doing this thing. Now you start to bring other people into your team who weren't there at the beginning, right? It's like you're adding people that you're interviewing and so on. So how do you think about growth from a point of view of like maintaining a company culture so you don't lose that magic that you had, that bravery that you had?
All right, I gotta be transparent here. I'm really bad at this startup thing. The cultural thing is usually the main thing that people say when they start a company. Say we're gonna put on the wall the pillars of our culture and try to live by it. And for a long time, for some reason, I don't wanted to do it. I didn't want to do it because I don't know. It felt forced. It felt unnatural. And but at some point, as we started growing, when we passed perhaps 20, 30 people, we started wondering, okay, maybe it's time for us to actually put some words into it, because we knew that we had something. We knew that we actually preserved some kind of coherent universe inside Livestorm with the same kind of values. And when trying to put words on that, the main thing that we realize is, well, we kind of hired the same people over and over. There was like really common pattern, common criteria. So it was more of a empirical approach of culture rather than something more, hypothetical, built right from the foundations. And well, for us, the main thing that was, I wanted people that were humble, because in a startup, well, in the tech ecosystem, you see a lot of people that are brilliant, really brilliant, but you also see a lot of ego. And with having those people being humble, being simple, you create the consequences. You create a culture of feedback. You create this culture of having exchanges with people that you were not many exchange, and get some ideas from sales, from CX, from whatever. And it's really a really interesting thing to have. Resourceful, being autonomous, all those were the patterns that we saw in every people that we hired. And at the end of the day, we put some words into it, and now we actually have a proper value sheet that is on the Notion, on the knowledge base, and we promote that. And this is, I don't know, we've been really bad at it. I don't know if this is the right model to follow, but I think the empirical approach for us worked really well. And up until now, those value is still legit, and they are still up to date. And the people we hired, I'm still looking for the same red flags or positive flags over and over again. And people seem happy about it. So I guess we're doing something right again.
Yeah, and Jill, I would suggest that you had a culture map in mind from the beginning. You just you hadn't memorialized it in words yet. But you had in other words, when you interviewed somebody, probably within 5 minutes, you and your colleagues could look at that person and say, not going to be a fit. You knew,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we knew exactly. This is exactly the conversation to describe. It's like, I don't see myself working with this person. Oh, actually, I see myself working with this person,
Right.
exchanging ideas and bouncing, and so yeah, I guess we knew. We just didn't have the right
Right.
words.
And that's fine. You were busy building a business. It's okay. You didn't have to, no, you didn't need at that point in your development, you didn't need to take the time to try to articulate it, because you had enough safety in the leadership team is small enough and the company is small enough that everybody's going to go through that filter. The challenge of
tipping point was, I think the main tipping point was when you actually need to delegate the culture fit and the validation. At the end of the day, this is actually when you start wondering, okay, maybe I should put that on paper and educate people about the values, because if I hire a recruiter, that person needs to know what is a good fit and what is not a good fit. And actually, now that we are talking about it, I just realized that this might have been the tipping point.
Hey, pardon the interruption. It'll just be a beat. We want to tell you about something that's really exciting, and it might be very exciting to you if you're the owner, CEO, leader of a B2B company, roughly with $2 to $20 million in revenue, and you feel a little bit stuck. You know what I mean? Sales are a little flat, maybe even declining, challenged. Margins are being squeezed. Sales cycles seem to be lengthening, and lead flow is uncertain. We've designed a program based on over a dozen years of us doing exactly this for many B2B companies. It's called the Competitive Edge Program. And you can learn more about it at valueprop.com/edge. Tells you all about the program. It's a 90-day program, really focused on helping you sharpen your value proposition, aligning your value delivery, making sure your marketing program is doing what it has to do if you're in B2B, which is generate opportunities, and make sure your sales process is tight so that you can convert those opportunities into sales. So with that note, let's get back to an exciting episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. Right, well, that's interesting, right? Because, and then at that point also, some of those attributes are not just technical attributes.
Yeah.
Like we need a C# developer that does this, that, or the other thing. That's great. That's the technical resume, and you'll get a lot of those. But it's different because it's still a small company. And, you know, I've seen small companies go sideways with enough bad hires that all of a sudden just sucks the life out of everybody in leadership. It's just not the right fit. And in the end, it's not good for that person either. They need to be somewhere else where they can do what they do and so on. So, all right, so now here you are moving from this college-based project that takes off and validates that your instincts were right. There was a problem there. Big companies were ignoring it. You were addressing it. So now you're in the marketplace. And of course, we've gone through the pandemic, and that also put a lot of things online and so on. But I think a big part of your growth now is moving from like people finding you online and so on to being more purposeful in business development, and you're looking to move things at scale. So that means bigger companies and so on. Yeah. So how is that transition moving from, we kind of work within our networks and now we have to be more intentional to reach the world if we're going to grow?
That's a very good question. Actually, this is a really recent transition that we made. Historically, Livestorm has always been this self-service motion, that famous product-led growth that everybody talks about. Mm-hmm. It was, you know, you just go on a platform, put your credit card in, and you can pay. You don't have to talk to us. At the time, we were, again, really candid and young, and we were thinking, you know what, we can actually grow a business from 0 to 100 million ARR without even having sales team and not talking to the customer, and we're going to go this way and see what happens. And turns out it doesn't work really this way, because when you have only that motion, you mostly address SMBs. SMBs has a really different behaviors than enterprise, and well, bigger customers in general, they tend to optimize for budget. They tend to have maybe a less usage than the rest. So it's really hard. And plus it is a less predictable funnel of revenue, because, you know, you depend from inbound. This is like, it is pretty much like the weather. You don't know if 1 month's going to be down or up, so you have to, you know, mitigate the risk and optimize for those seasonality. So I think that was also the tipping point where we decided to see, okay, we want to be the master of our own destiny and try to actually be more predictable in our way of, you know, predict the revenue and predict the growth, because self-service is cool, but again, it doesn't have that. So we started doing sales. It was back in 2019. Late 2019. It was a really commando team, kind of 5 people, so really small. And the goal was to say, you know what, we're gonna take it slowly and try to move those people on a monthly basis commitment or yearly basis commitment, trying to consolidate revenue. That was pretty much it. And see if there was actually a fit, a product market fit for actually buying a yearly version, a longer commitment of that same product. Once we had validated that, then we could move up higher in the chain, getting more customers, bigger customers. That was 2020. And in 2020, we started doing some enterprise. We had like, well, a lot of big enterprise, really big, normal ones, small ones, until we find some kind of fit in terms of process, in terms of sales, in terms of speech, that that now is more in a mid-market kind of enterprise kind of range, and now we're slightly moving higher and higher. And I think the main difficulty in that transition is to accommodate product and sales, because product has a roadmap. It's a holy roadmap. You don't touch it, because we don't want to become an agency. We don't want to do something that is tailored for a customer, because out of a sudden you build this Frankenstein product. But at the same time, you have to listen to the market. You have to listen, because sales are eyes and ears of the market, and you don't just build for the product, you do it for the customer, you build also for the market. So we had to educate sales on how to give feedback to product, and how to give feedback to the product in the most educated way. And product, we had to educate them on how to be flexible in a way to address the need of the market. And once you have cracked that, once you have actually managed to do that, then everything went well. We didn't have more friction, and that was the main difficulty. I think the other difficulty was to transition growth team that was really used to self-service motion and pure acquisition on the self-service motion, to something that is more sales-driven and routing part of the acquisition towards lead gen and sales conversations. So we had to. It was not a difficult thing. It's just a long process that takes time, and people shouldn't know it. It takes time to actually, trying to duplicate your growth automation paradigm towards sales when you have something that is historically built 100% self-service. So I think those were the two main challenges for 2020, and now we're just getting out of it now, just now. So it takes a long time, and now we see that more and more, the enterprise sales mindset is here. So that's a really cool motion now, to see more predictable revenue. So we are just entering it now. It took about a year or so.
Well, it's interesting because first of all, seeing the difference in those motions, as you put it, and that they are different, they sometimes also require different people, because people think differently and have different, different skill set, different approach. If you hire somebody that's business development and they expected the self-service model to carry the day, and all of a sudden you say, well, you actually have to reach out and make relationships and work your way through a procurement process at a large company that may take 6 months before they make a decision. And you're going to be in a competitive dog race with other technologies that are also pretty cool in their own right. That's a whole different mindset than, well, I'm just waiting for the cash register to go online, because that's the magic of automation. Everybody wants subscription revenue. Everybody wants to be Dollar Shave Club in every category. And you still have those opportunities, but some of those bigger ticket items are what we call in our practice a considered purchase. It means many people are going to have an opinion about moving forward, even if it looks relatively trivial. Big companies don't spend, and that's the thing, they don't spend small money any faster than big money. It all goes through the machine. They have their process, so you have to understand their process. It's great that you learned that quickly and adapted to that.
Well, Gilles, the main thing is to take like really slowly. I think the main mistake that we've seen from other companies is say, oh, we're gonna move to enterprise sales. We're gonna go big guns and go after the big companies, which I think is probably not the best idea, because as you say, otherwise you go into procurement and go all those processes, and you're not equipped for it, because you don't have a legal team, you don't have security, pre-sales, all those things. So you have to go slowly, step by step. Perhaps the next move for sales is to go yearly, then perhaps increase the MRR, average revenue per account, for your sales to perhaps like 2 times what you have in self-service. And then you grow step by step until you finally reach that enterprise sales motion as it's supposed to be. But anyway,
no, that's great. that's a whole little masterclass right there on growth, I think, and very brilliantly done, Gil. And so it doesn't surprise me that you've had this success. So very quick question here, as we come close to the end of our time here. And thanks so much again for sharing with us from sunny Athens. I love it. As you look out at the future, right? What do you see in your future? Where if we revisited this conversation in 5 years, what's happening?
Look, it's really interesting because actually I try to put a sentence internally to trying to illustrate that, and I realized that the main thing, we don't get up for IPO. We don't get up because we want to do an exit. We get up because we actually want to create a new product category. And what is in the sentence that I've shared with the team is that in 2026, we want to be the leader of a new Gartner metrics category called video engagement platform, because we believe there is something to be built in that market, leaving a footprint of something that will continue even after a Livestorm, some kind of legacy, because we created a new line of product into the market. And yeah, that's probably something that I will look 5 years from now. Yeah,
that's fantastic. That's really clear, and it's aspirational. It's helped you so far to create space, and it also differentiates you, which is what makes it really strong. It stands out as something else, and not just made up words. It's a real thought, and you can explain it, and you've been doing it. So, Gilles, as somebody listening to this podcast said, "Gee, this sounds interesting. I'd like to learn more about this platform, about Gilles." How would they best go on the web to find you and about you, and to maybe make contact with you, if that made sense?
Yeah, so the platform, is livestorm.co. And for me, if you want to reach out, you just go on my Twitter account. I'll send you over the link so you can put it to your listeners. So it's Gilles Bertaux. Sorry, it's a really weird way of spelling it, but I'll share with you the link and the full name. Find me on Twitter, find me on LinkedIn, type CEO at Livestorm, you'll find me anyway. And feel free to reach out. Happy to connect.
Gilles, thank you once again. Really appreciate you taking the time with us today.
Likewise. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to another episode of the Revenue Throughput Podcast. If you like this episode and if you like the series, make sure you subscribe below. And also, if you liked it, please do review it. When people are looking for something exciting to listen to, especially the kind of content we're bringing, which is practical insights for B2B companies, this is a place and a free resource that they can take advantage of. Let them know about it with your review. So subscribe, review, enjoy. Thanks again.